So it's really an ad hoc situation where America's role in the world is in a downward spiral. That disdain really emanates from an instability of American diplomacy and an ignorance of these countries.
So recently, Jeffrey Sachs went on Andrew Napolitano's podcast to destroy the idea that the U.S. leads the world. Even though our foreign policy apparatus behaves in such a way, it's no longer the unipolar moment. Jeffrey Sachs explains why and how America could actually depart from this road to madness, destruction, and war. So let's get his take on it. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Does the United States still lead the world?
No, not in any practical sense. The U.S. is still very powerful, but the U.S. Has made sufficient numbers of enemies in all regions of the world that there's an open backlash against the United States, even from the countries traditionally closest to the United States. So leadership is not the right word. Threats, yes. Some countries bending to U.S. demands, others utterly rejecting U.S. demands. But leadership, no, not conceptual leadership, thought leadership, moral leadership, economic leadership, technological leadership. No, the U.S. is one of a number of powerful countries, but most countries are trying to figure out how to manage their relations with the United States, but do not want to be led by the United States, to say the least.
Yeah, totally agree with this. We're no longer in the unipolar moment at the beginning of the 90s after the end of the Cold War, where the U.S. really was the sole superpower in the world for the first time in its history. I mean, certainly the U.S. has now kind of spoiled whatever positive image and, good faith relations that it had in many ways with other countries. But what we've seen now is the galvanization of the BRICS alliance. And it's not just the countries that the U.S. has alienated. It's the exact ones that they have alienated have been significant, like China and Russia, driving those two in a similar alliance, bonding those two countries in ways that didn't have to happen. And now India, with this new 50% tariff, is not exactly doing Trump a big service too, given that he actually had positive interactions and relations with Modi prior to this. So there are a lot of things to be concerned with, and Sachs is right about this.
In your view, does the State Department, does the Defense Department, does the White House, does the deep state recognize the truth of what you just said?
No, we don't have an effective foreign policy at all. Our diplomatic capacity is absolutely almost non-existent. The president himself relies on ad hoc friends and friends of the family to be official or unofficial envoys. We don't have a diplomatic corps that is stable. We just had the senior U.S. Diplomat in Denmark called in, summoned because of U.S. meddling in Greenland, which is quite apparent, where Trump says he wants Greenland, even though it's a part of Denmark. And he doesn't rule out any options to take it. Denmark is not exactly an enemy of the United States traditionally. It's part of NATO, it's part of the U.S. alliance, but it is completely vulnerable to and at odds with the United States right now. We simply don't have diplomacy. Everything is utterly ad hoc. Terrible mistakes are being made, really shocking mistakes, even from the narrowest U.S. Interest point of view. For example, within the past 2 weeks, Donald Trump, for no reason at all, has completely alienated the government of India and the people of India by putting a so-called penalty 25% tariff on India for importing Russian oil.
Actually, it's 50%, I'm pretty sure, Sachs, and I'll double check that, but I believe the secondary tariff is 50% on India, and that's even worse. This is going to soil relations between the US and India. This was the one country, major country, a nuclear power, by the way, that Trump had very good relations with. He had very good relations with Modi in his first term. Modi has spoke glowingly about Trump despite being in the BRICS alliance. And India is a country that, if you were smart, if you actually wanted to use diplomacy, and Sachs is right, they don't know the meaning of the word in Washington. If you wanted to use it, you could have used it like Nixon. Maybe the best thing he did was wrestling China out from its alliance with Russia. Trump could have done the same with India, trying to wrestle India out of its alliance with the BRICS countries, with China and Russia. But no, let's just antagonize that nuclear power too. So now Trump's antagonized 3 nuclear powers, India, China, and Russia, and those are vying to be new superpowers. It's about the stupidest thing you could possibly do. This is only going to sow the seeds of discord between the West and BRICS when, you know, you could have diplomacy, you could have peace with these countries, you could have commerce and trade and negotiations, but no. All Washington understands is war. Trump's no exception. It all comes down to what Chomsky said when he said, if you want to keep people obedient, you have to narrow the spectrum of allowable opinion and allow lively debate within those parameters. And that's what happens. It's, you know, in Washington, it's not how much, you know, it's not whether or not we're going to fund Ukraine or whether we're going to fund Israel. It's how much funding they're going to get. And, you know, 5% cuts or 5% raises in that funding is cause for the most vociferous debate. But it's all skirting the issue. It's all anti-diplomatic.
When Europe imports Russian gas, China imports Russian oil, but India was the one that suddenly faced this punitive action. And I can only tell you the depth of anger, resentment, feeling of betrayal that is pervasive in Indian intellectual circles and beyond for a move that has no sense and no consequence. So it's really an ad hoc situation where America's role in the world is in a downward spiral.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that that sticks it to the American taxpayer, no matter how they try to sell this, market this, and propagandize this. It's Americans that pay the taxes on foreign goods. I mean, the Indian manufacturers will suffer to an extent, but American consumers will suffer even more. So despite the fact that they propagandize this as, hey, we're taxing Indians, no, they're sticking the bill to you, the American taxpayer, that dares to want to buy products from India that might be superior or cheaper. Heaven forbid that when we go to the gas station and the grocery store and see the prices that they are.
Let me ask you about India for just a minute and prevail on your other field of expertise, which is economics. We know that Trump has said the reason he's doing this is because he wants to punish India for buying oil from Russia, because he somehow thinks that will diminish the purchases and that will affect the Russian military. I don't think that's going to happen, but this is at least the argument.
Yeah, that's not going to affect the situation on the battlefield whatsoever. This is more grasping for straws. It's what Trump's done this entire administration.
That he's made. In the process of doing things like that, and notwithstanding his scowling and attempts to demonize BRICS, hasn't he effectively unified and strengthened BRICS?
Of course, as soon as he took that measure, there was a flurry of very high-level diplomacy among Brazil, Russia, China, and India. I happened to see some of it very close up, but it was at the level of heads of state, and it was at the level of foreign ministers, defense ministers, very senior officials, in other words. And it was all of those countries talking with each other. Brazil on the line with Russia, Brazil on the line with India, Brazil on the line with China, China and Russia, China and India, Russia and India, It was amazing, actually, within a very short period of time. India's Prime Minister Modi will meet with China's President Xi Jinping at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting in just a few days. This will be a very high-level meeting. They will reinforce their partnership within the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and within the BRICS. The BRICS countries, which are about half of the world's population and close to half of the world's GDP, are definitely taking notice, becoming more strongly aligned. This year is chaired by Brazil, where President Lula of Brazil said very pointedly and clearly, we don't want an emperor, referring to Donald Trump's demands on Brazil, in that case, to close down a process of the independent judiciary of Brazil. Absolutely bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, the BRICS alliance is concerning. It's something a lot of Americans don't even know about if they're not paying close attention to these issues, but there's no doubt this strengthens BRICS. And this sticks it to India, country, again, that there should be closer ties to if you actually even want to have a wise foreign policy and, chip away at the power of BRICS. And this is said when a lot of Trump's acolytes and supporters are out there saying, well, no, Trump's pivoted away from these threats of sanctions on Russia and secondary tariffs. Well, no, we saw today he went right back to that after talking about security guarantees, another way to poison pill and stop any potential of peace with Russia. Now, this is concerning because if the BRICS countries are driven so closely together in a bonded relationship and they create a new currency and they accumulate enough financial power to make that currency the new adopted currency that's the reserve currency of the world, that will have serious economic, catastrophic effects on the United States. So if you want a strong currency, which the dollar or no fiat currency really is, but even relative to other fiat currencies, you're not going to get it by driving more countries of significance like India closer to BRICS.
They have to say. Next year's BRICS is chaired by India. So, yes, Donald Trump is the great unifier. But
why the American disdain for India and China?
First of all, an unbelievable level of ignorance. I don't know of senior politicians in Washington who know much of anything about either country or either economy. There is a general disdain of any other country in Washington. There is a particular disdain for large countries because they dare to not bow down to the U.S. as if they really ever will again. But that disdain really emanates from an instability of American diplomacy and an ignorance of these countries.
Certainly so. When it comes to political class, the political class that inhabits Washington, D.C., there's no way better to say it than ignorance. These politicians are still living as if, again, it's the unipolar moment, as if the world is controlled by the U.S., that the U.S. is the world's sole superpower, the military-industrial complex and the Israel lobby guides most of their decision-making process. AIPAC even kind of boasts about it on their site, saying, hey, we have 361 supporters within this Congress in the bag. That's something like close to 2/3 of them. I think there's 435 plus 100 in the Senate. And that's just the truth. So Jeffrey Sachs is right. Rarely does the Washington foreign policy regime, regardless of whether it's a Democrat or Republican in the White House, is it ever really steered toward diplomacy, peace, and trade as the default. It always has to be war, regime change operations, sanctions, and secondary tariffs. Like we're seeing now, Trump is no different in this way, despite some changes in rhetoric. this war continues with Russia. It's a proxy war versus Russia, using Ukraine as the proverbial pawn in the grand chessboard of U.S. empire building, for sure, as Brzezinski kind of put it in his 97 article about this to some extent, and about how NATO was being leveraged as an offensive mechanism. It's not strictly a defensive military alliance. Libya and Afghanistan and the Balkans will tell you why on that one. But that's where we're at. And I think Sachs is exactly right. These stupid threats of economic sanctions and tariffs against countries for daring to trade with a power that's in close proximity to them, that it would be advantageous for them and their citizens to trade with. Besides, these tariffs don't really stick it to the governments in general. It sticks it to consumers in your own country who are now paying more for the products that they routinely buy. So Indian products will be more expensive in the US. You'll pay that tariff. It's not going to be Indians. It's certainly not India's government, by the way. In fact, this arms India's government with a new propaganda tool for those that do want to oppose and depart from close relations with the United States, to say, hey, look at what they've done. This is adversarial. It's not, it's not changing the battlefield in Ukraine, and it kind of disables us from being able to flourish economically to the fullest extent. Why would we continue this relationship with the U.S. because of this? That's exactly what they can say. I guarantee you, those that want more of a close BRICS relationship within India will make these arguments. They will make these arguments in India. The U.S. will pay the price, and Trump just isn't willing to end this war. He's not willing to do what it takes, and that means disengagement. Say categorically and declare Ukraine won't be part of NATO. There won't be any security guarantees, no Article 5 like security guarantee, which is NATO but not in term, I guess, the same thing. That would be at the root of this entire war, Ukraine's status in NATO. Putin's willing to accept Ukraine as a buffer zone, as a neutral area, and that was the case when Yanukovych was elected in 2010, but that wasn't good enough for the deep state and the neocons and the military-industrial complex and the liberal establishment under Obama too. They had to overthrow that government, and that's exactly what they did in 2014 in the Maidan coup. They called it the Revolution of Dignity, but it was really the Revolution of Duplicity, with US aid money flowing in, with Victoria Nuland and Jeffrey Pyatt discussing who would be part of the provisional government. This had CIA and State Department fingerprints all over it. But that's where we're at. I think Jeffrey Sachs is correct. This is not a world that's led by the U.S. The president is not the leader of the free world. There are other superpowers to deal with now, and the U.S. should deal with them in kind spirit and candid spirit and with diplomacy and peace in mind, rather than war and economic destruction. But that's what I think. Let me know down below. Do you agree with Jeffrey Sachs? Is the world still led by the U.S.? Is the U.S. still a sole superpower, or are there other vying countries for that distinction now? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, also subscribe to Judge Napolitano. Really appreciate his podcast. And please consider becoming a member by clicking down below. Click the join button. If you do that, you can help support my channel out, and in return, I'll give you access to all of my videos before they go live on my channel to the general public. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.